Hello everybody. Thank you for joining the second session of this year's Extensions 101 webinar series. So in our last session, we explored building extensions for Zoho Projects, where we saw how we can create an extension, test it, publish it, and share that extension. So we also explored two important features which were available in the Sigma platform called as connections and widgets, and how effectively they can be used while you're building a Zoho Projects extension. So in today's session also, we'll be continuing with exploring extension development for Zoho Projects, and we'll be seeing one important feature called as Modal Box and its uses while you're building an extension for Zoho Projects. So with that said, let's get into the agenda for today's session. So as I mentioned, the focus of today's webinar topic is going to be the feature Modal Box. And this Modal Box feature is an enhancement of the widgets concept that we discussed in the last session. So we'll be starting off with a quick run through or a recap on widgets and the JS SDK methods, after which we'll be entering into today's topic, which is Modal Box. So we'll see an introduction to Modal Box, followed by the uses of Modal Box, that is, when and where can this feature be effectively used. And then we'll see the methods which are supported by Zoho Projects to handle this Modal Box feature. And finally, we'll conclude with an example use case demonstration of building a Zoho Projects extension where we'll be utilizing these features, widgets and Modal Box. So this is the agenda that we're going to see in today's session. So let me start with a quick recap on the widgets concept. So we saw that widgets were nothing but they are customizable UIs which are going to help you to provide a seamless experience to the end user who's going to use your application. So while exploring widgets, we saw that there are two major steps which were involved in creating and using a widget as part of an extension. So the first step was to create the widget itself, that is to create the user interface that is required for your widget. So in order to do that, you'll be handling the front end by using HTML and CSS files, and the logic that the widget is going to perform has to be handled by using your JavaScript code. So once you finish creating the widget, the second important step is to configure that widget as part of your extensions plugin manifest.json file. So we saw that any feature that you're going to be utilizing as part of your Zoho Projects extension will have to be configured in the extensions plugin manifest.json file in order for that feature to function efficiently as part of your extension. So I've just included a screenshot over here to show you how the widgets will be configured in the plugin manifest.json file. So while we saw this configuration, we saw that we have to include three key parameters in order to configure this widget in your plugin manifest file. So the first parameter was the name for your widget. And the second parameter was the location, which is going to be the location in which this widget is going to be embedded in your Zoho Projects. And finally, the third parameter was URL, which is going to be the path of the HTML file that is going to render the user interface for your widget. So these three key parameters will have to be included while you're configuring the widget as part of your extensions plugin manifest.json file. So after we saw the steps, we also explored certain JS SDK methods that were offered by Zoho Projects. So these JS SDK methods were nothing but they are methods that are going to help you to handle and manipulate data related to your Zoho project modules. So in order to use these JS SDK methods as part of your widget code or your widget script, there were two mandatory things that need to be done. So the first thing was to include the prerequisite source URL. So this URL had to be included as part of your widget script in order to use the JS SDK methods in your script. And the second thing was to use the init method, which is going to help you to initialize your extension. So once you finish these two mandatory things, then you can go ahead and use the JS SDK methods as part of your widget code. So one of the important JS SDK methods that we explored in our last session was this request JS SDK method. So this method is primarily used to invoke a third-party applications API. So let's say you're going to be making an API call to a third-party application as part of your widget script. Then in that case, in order to invoke that third-party application API, you can use this request JS SDK method in your widget script. So we'll be utilizing this method as part of our use case demonstration today as well. So let me just give you all a recap on the brief of how this method needs to be constructed and invoked. So this is the format in which this request method needs to be constructed. So there are three parameters that you'll be passing to the request method. The first thing is the URL, which is going to be the API of the third-party application that you're going to be invoking. And the second thing was object, which is going to be the data that is going to be required in order to invoke that particular API. So whatever data is required to invoke the API has to be constructed as a JSON object and passed as the second parameter to this request method. And finally, the connection link name. So in order to have a secure data transfer between your applications, a connection would have been created and configured as part of your plugin manifest file. So we saw that those steps as well in our last session. So that connection which is configured in our plugin manifest file, that link name will have to be provided as your third parameter. So in this format, you can construct the parameters for the request method and invoke it in order to make third-party API calls as part of your widget script. So this was like a quick recap or a run through that we wanted to give on the widgets concept and the JS SDK methods. So now that we have an overview on those basics, let's get into the focus of today's session, which is going to be the feature called as Modal Box. So this Modal Box, as I mentioned earlier, is like an enhancement to the widgets feature that we discussed. So Modal Box is nothing but it's going to be like a pop-up UI or a dialog box that's going to appear over your currently active screen. So let's say you have a widget that you've created, like we explored widgets in our last session, right? So let's say we have a widget and we're going to consider that as a parent window, a parent widget. So from the parent widget, if you want to pop up like a dialog box or a prompt box, then in that case, you can go ahead and use this Modal Box feature, which will create that Modal Box UI, which is going to be a dialog box. So when this pop-up Modal Box UI is going to appear, then all the other content in the background screen will be deactivated until and unless your Modal Box is closed. So when your Modal Box screen is active, right, you'll be able to perform operations only in that particular UI. So in cases of normal widget that you're handling, you'll be able to perform functionalities in other sections of the screen as well. But when it comes to the Modal Box pop-up UI, only that screen will be active and all the other contents in the background screen will be deactivated until this Modal Box is closed. So this is like an overview of the Modal Box feature. Next, let's see when and where can these Modal Boxes be used. So ideally, since they're similar to widgets, they can be used in cases where you want to display information to the user based on some user input. So let's say you have a parent widget, right? As part of the parent widget, you're going to ask the end user to provide some input text, or let's say you're going to ask the end user to make some choice. So once the end user makes a choice, if you want to display some information based on the choice that the end user has performed as part of the parent widget, then in that case, you can go ahead and use this Modal Box feature. So based on the input that the end user is going to choose, you can prop up a dialog box UI, which is going to be our Modal Box UI, where you're showcasing information based on the input selected by the end user in the parent widget. So this is one case where you can just display information as part of your Modal Box UI. So there are also other scenarios where you can also engage the user in activities as part of your Modal Box. So let's just take the same example reference that we saw. So from our parent widget, you're asking the end user to make a choice, and based on the choice, you're going to display information in the Modal Box UI. So along with the information that is displayed, let's say you have a button in the Modal Box UI itself, which is going to allow the user to perform some activity or engage them in the engage in some activity as part of the Modal Box UI. So on click of the button, you can perform some functionality, which can also reflect in the data as part of your parent widget. So what I've done is I've added some real-time use cases for you to understand better on this Modal Box concept. So as a first example, this is a task page in your Zoho Projects account. So inside a particular task, there are multiple task details tab, right? So I have a widget in our task details tab, which is called as search articles. So this is going to be our parent widget. So this is like a normal widget. So as part of this search articles widget, we are going to ask the end user to provide a search keyword based on which articles can be searched. Okay. So here I'm asking them to place a search for articles related to their search text. So let's say they're going to give the input as market. Based on the value that is provided by the end user in this parent widget, on click of this search articles button, you can prompt them with the dialog box UI. So this is going to be a modal box UI where you can display articles based on the search text that was provided by the end user in the parent window. So here you can see that when the modal box is active, when this screen is active, all the other contents in the background screen will be deactivated. So unless and until this modal box is closed, you will not be able to perform any other operation in your background screen. So this is the advantage of using modal box feature. So this was one case where we are displaying information through the modal box UI. So let's see another example. So this is also a task page in Zoho Projects account. So let's say I have another task details widget called as desk tickets associated. So if I wish to have any of my desk tickets associated with this particular task that I'm working on in Zoho Projects, then that can be handled using this particular widget. So here you can see that I already have one ticket associated with this task with the number as 101. Along with that, I'm showcasing all the other available desk tickets over here in a drop-down window. So all my Zoho desk tickets are going to be listed over here. So as an end user, I can go ahead and make a choice. I can choose one of the tickets and click on Get Ticket Details button and associate that ticket. So when I click on this button, I am going to be prompted with a modal box UI where all the information related to that particular ticket can be displayed as part of this UI. So here, based on the input provided by me in the parent widget, in my modal box widget, I'm able to see the information related to that particular ticket. Along with that, I have a button over here called as Associate this ticket with the task. So while I'm engaging myself by clicking on this button, this particular ticket can be associated with the task that I'm working on as well. So if I click on the button, then you can see that that operation is reflected in my parent widget. And over here, you can see that the Zoho desk tickets associated with this task was earlier only 101. Now, both the tickets 101 and 102 are associated. So in this way, we've also displayed information to the end user through the modal box UI and also engage them in some activity as part of the modal box UI where that data has been reflected as part of a parent widget as well. So this was an overview on the modal box feature and the efficiency of when and where they can be used. So now let's see the supported methods by Zoho Projects to handle this modal box feature as part of our extension. So I'm going to enter into the link. So by default, Zoho Projects offers certain methods to handle this feature as part of your extension. So in this page, there are multiple methods involved, which I can see over here. So on this page, we have methods to open a modal box, close a modal box, resize a modal box. Similarly, we have methods like instance, emit, and on. So each of these methods are going to help you to handle data transfer between your parent widget and your modal box widget. So our parent widget and the modal box widget is going to be like a child widget which is going to pop up from your parent widget. So to handle data transfer between them, so to throw data from one widget and to receive the data in another widget, all this could be handled by these methods which are supported by Zoho Projects itself. So what I've done is I've taken the most significant methods that we are going to explore as part of our use case demonstration today and listed them in a slide over here. So the methods that we are going to be exploring today in our use case demonstration are create, instance, emit, on, and close. So this create method is going to help you to create your modal box. So this pop-up UI that's going to appear, right? In order to create that, you can use this create method which is supported by Zoho Projects. Then you have the instance method which is going to help you to create an instance for the modal box that was created. So when we explore other development languages, right? You remember like if you have a class, then you can create an object for it. Similarly, for the modal box that you've created, you can go ahead and create an instance for that modal box using the using the instance method. So once that instance for the model box has been created, then you can go ahead and send data to it or throw data to it. So that in order to send data from your parent widget to the child widget, which is your model box UI, you can do that using the emit method. So the emit method is going to help you to send or throw data from the current location. So once you send the data from your parent widget, then at the child widget end, that is your model box UI's end, you'll have to receive that data in order to perform further functionalities, right? So in order to do that, you have this on method which is supported. So using the on method, you can receive or listen data that was thrown from the emit method. So these methods can be used in the opposite way as well. That is, you can use the emit method in your parent widget to send data to the child widget and receive that at the child widget's end using the on method. Similarly, if you want to throw some data from your child widget, that is your model box UI, then you can do it by using the emit method in your child widget's end and then receive that at the parent widget's end by using the emit method in your parent widget. So after we've seen how you can create a widget, then create an instance for it, throw data and receive the data, finally we have a method called as close, using which you can close the model box that you've created. So in order to relate or understand to these concepts or these methods better, I'm going to include like a flow diagram. So let me just go over here. So we are going to see that we have a parent widget and a child widget, right? So the child widget is basically our model box UI. So let's see how using these methods, data will flow across these two widgets, okay? So using this model.create method, you can create the model box. So using this method in the parent window, you will be able to create the model box UI. Similarly, using the instance method, you will be able to create an instance for the model box that is created. So you're creating a model box and an instance for it has been created. So once this instance is created, when this model box instance is going to be opened, that event can be captured at the parent widget end by using this model.open method. So only when the parent widget knows that the model box UI has opened, it can go ahead and send or emit data to that model box UI, right? So that event of the model box being opened can be captured at the parent widget's end using the model.opened method. So once the parent widget knows that the model box UI is opened, it can go ahead and emit data to the child window using the emit method. So data is thrown from the parent using the emit method, and once that is thrown, it can be received at the child widget or the model box UI's end using the on method. So emitted data is received using the on method in order to perform further functionalities as part of your child widget. So in the same way, as I mentioned, you can also throw data from your child widget by using the emit method in the child widget. So data can be thrown from the child using the emit method, and that can be received in the parent widget using the on method. So the data thrown from the child file is received using the on method in the parent widget. Finally, you can go ahead and close the model box instance that was created by using the model.close method. So this is how the model box will be created and data will flow between your parent widget and the child widget using these methods which are supported by Zoho Projects. So ultimately, we are going to be using these methods as part of our widget script, right? So we are going to have two widget files, one for our parent widget and one for the child widget, which is going to be our model box UI. So I have also included another representation of our widget scripts and how these methods will be used as part of our parent widget and a child widget for you all to relate better, okay? So we saw that the first method that will be used as part of our parent file is the model.create method, right? So this will help you to create a model box. You'll have to pass the model location as a parameter to this model.create method in order for the parent widget to redirect it to that particular model box UI. So from the parent file, the new model box UI has to be redirected or has to be created, right? So that location as to where this child file is going to be created or redirected has to be specified over here as a parameter. So that's what we've done over here. So in the model location, we've specified the URL redirection path as the path of the child file. So here I've just given app/file.html, which is our child file's location. So after you created a model box using this model.create method, the next step is to create an instance for this particular model box. So that is done using the Zoho Projects.instance method. So after you create an instance for the model box, that's stored in a variable called as model instance. So now, when this instance is going to be opened, can be captured by this parent file by using the model.open method. So the instance of the model box being opened is captured at the parent file end using the model.open method. So once this parent file knows that the model box has been opened, you can go ahead and emit data to that model box by using the emit method. So we are emitting data to the instance in the form of a key value pair. You can provide a key name of your choice. Here I've given the key as submit, and the value has to be the data that you're going to emit to the child file. So I've constructed some data over here and passed it as the value parameter over here. So once you emit it from the parent file, it has to be received or listened at the child file end, right? So in order to do that, or to receive the data at the child file's end, as I mentioned, you can go ahead and use the on method. So one important thing that we need to remember is that you have to use the same key with which you have emitted the data from the parent file in order to receive that particular data in the child file. So we've emitted the data using the key called as submit, right? So that same key has to be used over here in order to receive the data that was thrown. So when I use this on method and use the same key over here, the data that was thrown from here will be captured as part of this data parameter, using which further functionalities can be performed as part of your widget. So we've seen how we can emit data from the parent file to the child file. So in cases where you want to go ahead and emit data from the child file, that can be done again using the emit method, and as I mentioned, key value pair. So the key that we are going to give over here has to be another key name. So I've given the key as submitted over here, constructed some data and passed it over here. So that can be received at the parent file's end using the on method. So I've used the same key, submitted with key was used to emit data from the child file, and the same key is used over here to receive that data. So once all this is done, if you want to close that model box, then that can be done using this model.close method. So this is the way in which these methods are supported by Zoho Projects to handle this model box feature as part of your extension. So next we are going to see a use case demonstration where we are going to be utilizing the widgets and the model box concept. So for our use case, we are going to be taking an integration between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. So let's say as an agent, you're using Zoho Desk to handle tickets. So let's say your customers are going to raise issues regarding the product they are using, right? So they are going to be logged as tickets in your Zoho Desk. And those tickets that you're getting from the customers, you're going to work on them by using the Zoho Projects issues module. So you get tickets from the customers, and those tickets, let's say you get a ticket saying that the product's version is not fine or is not up to the mark, then you need to work on that particular versions feature in order to improvise it, right? So that working can be done as part of your Zoho Projects issues module. So as an agent who is handling both these products, Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk, it would ideally be convenient for them if the Zoho Desk tickets that they are working on are displayed to them as part of a tab in Zoho Projects itself. So when they're able to view all their Zoho Desk tickets within Zoho Projects itself, they will be able to prioritize the issue that they need to work on first, work on that particular issue and provide a resolution as soon as possible. So once they work on that issue and get a resolution, then they can go ahead and update it in their desk, and address the customer accordingly. So this is the use case that we're going to try and achieve as part of our extension today. So I have also included a visual representation of the example that we just discussed. So let's say I'm using my Zoho Desk and I have around 5 tickets which I'm working on in Zoho Desk. So all these tickets that I have in Zoho Desk can be displayed as a tab in Zoho Projects. So let's say I have a tab called as Desk Open Tickets inside my Zoho Projects. So as part of this as part of this particular tab, which is going to be our parent widget, we are going to display all the tickets that are associated for us in our Zoho desk. So as an end user, I can go ahead and make a choice of a particular ticket and click on the Get Ticket Details button, which will prompt me with a Modal Box UI, which displays all the information related to that particular ticket that I'm working on. So let's say I have information like the ticket ID, status, priority, and also the URL. So based on the status of that particular task, I can go ahead and prioritize that issue, work on that issue accordingly, and update the response to the CX in desk. So you can also get the web URL of the desk ticket over here. So using that web URL, you can directly visit the Zoho desk particular ticket and provide a response to your customer as well. So this is what we are going to achieve in our extension today. I've also included some sample output screenshots of how our extension functionality would appear. So this is going to be a parent widget called as Desk Open Tickets. I'm going to have the associated Zoho Desk tickets displayed as a drop-down list. And on click of a particular ticket, I'm going to, on choosing a particular ticket, I'm going to use the Get Ticket Details button to prompt and open a Modal Box UI where I'm going to have all the ticket information specific to that particular ticket that was chosen by the end user in the parent widget. So in order to achieve this functionality as part of our extension, we would require certain components, right? So I've listed those components in our next slide. So we are going to require two major components. One is going to be connections. So obviously we are going to be invoking the Zoho Desk API to get information related to the tickets, right? So when we are going to be making API calls between two applications, data transfer has to be secure. So we are going to be creating a connection for that. So that's the first component. The second component is widgets. So we require two widgets over here. One is going to be a parent widget, and the next thing is going to be our Modal Box widget, which is our child widget. So as part of our parent widget, the parent widget's functionality is essentially fetching all the Zoho Desk tickets associated to us and displaying it as a drop-down list, right? So in order to do that, we are going to invoke the Zoho Desk API to list all the associated tickets. So if you remember, while we saw the recap of the widgets concept, if you want to invoke any third-party applications API as part of your widget script, then that can be done using the Request JS SDK method. So we'll be using the Request JS SDK method to invoke the Zoho Desk API to fetch all the tickets that are associated to us and display it in a drop-down. So once that's done, that is the parent widget's functionality, we'll be moving on to the Modal Box widget, which is our child widget's functionality, wherein we want the information related to that particular ticket that the end user has chosen in the parent widget, right? So in order to fetch details of a particular ticket, we'll have to invoke the desk API to get a ticket detail. So we'll again be using the request method as part of our child widget, and we'll be invoking the Zoho Desk API to get the ticket details specific to a particular ticket ID. So these are the components that we'll be using in our extension. So what I've done is I've set up these components as part of my extension so that I can go ahead and show you how these components are configured in our extension and also showcase you the sample output. So let me just go to our Sigma platform where I've created the extension. So this is my Sigma platform, and this is the extension that I've created in order for our Modal Box extension functionality that we discussed. So this is the plugin manifest file, which we mentioned that any feature that we are going to be utilizing as part of our extension will have to be configured over here in order for those features to function smoothly. Okay, so we saw that we need connections and widgets, right? So I've created a connection between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. So we saw the steps in detail as to how to create the connection in our last session. So I've already created that connection, and that connection's value has been configured as the value to the connectors key in the plugin manifest file. So if you're utilizing any connection as part of your extension, then that value has to be included as the value to this connectors key in your plugin manifest file. So the first component has been configured. The second component is our widget, right? So that configuration is also done over here. So we've included those three key parameters: name, location, and URL. So the name is going to be desk open tickets. So this is going to be our parent widget, right? So the name is desk open tickets. It's going to be in the location project tab. So one of the tabs in our project, Zoho Projects project, is going to be this desk open tickets. And the URL is finally the file or the path of the HTML file that is going to render the UI for our widget. So I have kept it as app/index.html. So inside app, I have a file called as index.html where we have written the code for our parent widgets functionality. So you all might have a question as to, we discussed two widgets are required, the parent widget and the child widget, right? But we've only configured the parent widget over here. So whatever widget is going to be embedded in some location in your Zoho Projects account, only that widget will have to be configured in your extensions plugin manifest file. So our child widget, which is going to be our Modal Box widget, is going to be like a pop-up or a dialog box that appears on click of a functionality from within our parent widget, right? So that does not have to be configured over here. Only a parent file, which is going to be embedded in a particular location, has to be configured over here. And the redirection of the Modal Box UI from a parent widget, that particular functionality will handle it as part of our parent widgets code snippet itself. Okay, so that's the reason we've configured only a parent widget over here. So the parent widgets file was index.html. So now let's see how we've handled the widget script for our parent widget, which was desk open tickets. So we saw that if we have to include any JS SDK methods as part of our widget script, two mandatory things were supposed to be done. One was to include the prerequisite source URL as part of our script. So that's what we've done over here. We've included the source URL. And the second thing was to use the init method. So I've used the init method as well to initialize the extension. So now that I've handled the two mandatory things, we can go ahead and use the other JS SDK methods as part of a widget code. So this widgets functionality is to fetch the tickets associated to us in Zoho Desk and display it as part of a drop down, right? So for that, we are going to go ahead and invoke the particular Zoho Desk API. If you want to invoke any third-party API, we have to use the request JS SDK method. So we saw, right, this was the format in which the request method can be invoked. So we had three parameters for it. The first thing was the URL, which is going to be the API of the third-party application we are invoking. So we've used the desk API to get the associated tickets, assigned it to a variable called as URL and passed it as the first parameter. The second parameter is your ticket details. So the second parameter is basically the object that needs to be constructed in order for this particular API to be invoked. So desk requires certain parameters like the request type and other header values to be given and constructed in order to invoke this API. So all those details I've constructed over here and I've passed it as the second parameter to our request method. Finally, we are going to be making a call to desk API which needs a secure connection, right? So we've already created a connection in our plugin manifest file and configured it. So that connection link name, which is available in the plugin manifest file, is what we are providing as the third parameter over here. So once you've constructed this particular request JS SDK method in the format, the desk API to get the associated Zoho Desk tickets will be hit and the response will be retrieved. So ideally, you'll get all the tickets that you have associated as part of your Zoho Desk organization that will be received as the response for this particular request method. So once you get the response, what we've done over here is just constructed all that particular ticket details that we've got and put it in a drop down box. So if you just see the output that we discussed, right? You remember the parent widget, you're getting all those associated Zoho Desk tickets and displaying it as a drop down list, right? And then you have a button. So this place which we've done in code is basically fetching those details of the ticket and constructing it in a format to put it in a drop down box. So that's what we've done over here. So we've ideally got the ticket details, all the associated desk tickets and displayed it in a drop down. The next thing is that on click of the get ticket details button, we have to pass this ticket that was chosen by the end user from the parent widget to our model box UI and create that model box UI, right? So that's what we've handled as the second part of this parent widget. So on click of this get ticket details button, the functionality that's performed is what we are going to see next. So here, this ticket list is the ID of the drop down that we had given. So the drop down box that we've created, right? The ID for is called as ticket list. So whatever value that was chosen by the end user as part of the drop down list, that value is fetched and stored in a variable called as selected ticket ID. So this variable will have the ticket ID value that was chosen by the end user in our parent widget. So now that I've got the ID, I have to create the model box and pass that ID value to that model box. So we are going to see the methods that we discussed next. So you remember the first method that we saw was to use the model.create method in order to create our model box. So I've used the model.create method over here. And for that, you need to pass the location to which this model box is going to be redirected to. So for model location, we've passed the URL, which is going to be the path of our model box UI. So inside app, I have a file called as file.html, which is going to be the UI for our model box widget. So we'll be exploring that next, but this is the location to which this model box is going to be redirected to. So you're creating the model box by using the model.create method, and then we're using the instance method to create an instance for this model box. So that is stored in the variable called as model instance. Then we saw that the event of this model instance being opened can be captured in this parent widget's end by using the model.opened method. So that's the next functionality that we've done. We've captured the event of the model box being opened using the model.opened method. So now that the parent widget knows that the model box is being opened, it can go ahead and emit the data that is required to be passed to the child widget or the model box UI. So that is done using our emit method. So we are emitting the data to the model instance by using a key value format. So I am using the key called as stored ticket over here, and the value that I'm going to pass is this selected ticket ID. So the value of the ticket ID that was chosen by the end user, right, in the drop down, that value is what we are going to emit from our parent widget to our child widget. So as part of this ticket details button, we created a model box, created an instance for it, captured the event of it being opened, and then emitted the data, which is the selected ticket ID. So this was the functionality of our parent widget. Next, this value that is emitted by the parent widget, right, has to be captured at the child widget, that is our model box widget's end, in order to go ahead and perform further functionalities. So we saw that the model box is going to be redirected to this particular location, right? So inside app, this file.html is the UI that is going to be rendered as part of our model box widget. So since this is also a widget script, you have to include those two mandatory things in order to use the JS SDK methods. So we've included the prerequisite source URL over here as well. And then we've initialized the extension using the init method. So once these two things are done, next we are going to go ahead and receive the data that was emitted by the parent widget. So in order to receive the data, we saw that we have to use the on method followed by the key with which the particular data was emitted from a parent widget. So we emitted the data using the stored ticket key, right, from our index.html file. So using the same key, I'm using the on method to receive that particular data which was emitted. So that data which was emitted will now be available as part of this data parameter over here. So the selected ticket ID, right, the value chosen by the end user is now available to me in this data parameter as part of my child widget UI. So now that I have the ticket ID, the functionality of our model box widget was to display the information related to that particular ticket, right? So in order to do that, we have to get information related to a particular ticket by invoking the Zoho Desk API to get details specific to a ticket. So if we want to invoke a Zoho Desk API, you have to use the request method. So in the same format that we explored for our parent widget, the parameters are constructed. So the URL alone will be the API to invoke the Zoho Desk API to get the details of a particular ticket. So this is that API. Over here you can see that after the tickets you need to pass the ID for which you want to get the ticket ID for which you want to get the details. So that ID which was received from our parent widget, right, that was obtained in this data parameter is what I've passed over here. So this will be replaced by the ID, ticket ID that was chosen by the end user in the parent widget, and the details specific to this particular ticket will be received as a response when our request JS SDK method is invoked. So after I get these response, what we've done over here is basically just construct it in the format that we want to display it in our UI. So as part of our UI, once you click on the get ticket details button, we have some labels and some text boxes, right? So I've already created those labels and text boxes over here. And after we receive the details specific to that particular ticket ID, this is basically the construction of the data which we've received in the format of labels and text boxes. So this is the way in which we've used these methods to create a model box, create an instance, then emit data from your parent widget to your child widget. We've received the data in our child widget, and then using that data, we've invoked the desk API to display information related to that particular ticket. So this was the code functionality. Let us just go ahead and run this and see how the sample output works. So you can test this extension functionality by using the run button over here itself. So before you publish your extension, you can test the extension functionalities using this run option. So I've chosen one of my Zoho Projects portal. So this is redirect me to a testing portal where we can now see the functionality working. So we saw that we've embedded that widget in a particular location called as project tab, right? So let me get inside a particular project. So these are the multiple tabs which are available, and we have a tab called as desk open tickets. So this is our parent widget. So I have all my desk tickets which are available in my organization, Zoho Desk organization, displayed over here. On click of a particular ticket, if I use this get ticket details button, the information related to that particular ticket is now displayed as part of my Modal Box UI. So based on the status and the priority, as a project agent, I can go ahead and prioritize the issue that I need to work on that issue, and then provide a response to my customer. So here, as we mentioned, when the Modal Box UI is open, that is going to be your currently active screen. You can't perform any functionality in the background screens unless this Modal Box is closed. So this was the example that we wanted to showcase in our session today, where we've seen how model boxes can be used efficiently in order to transfer data between your parent widget and your child widget. So hope you got a clear understanding of this model box methods and how the data flow is occurring between your parent and child widget.